Hi, I'm Pat Ertl, and we're here at the first annual Vintage Truck Magazine Antique Truck Show. We're going to have this show every year on Father's Day weekend every year here at Young's Dairy in Yellow Springs, Ohio. This year at the show we've got about 60 trucks on hand. This is our first show, and we hope in next year maybe we'll double that number. In addition to the truck show, we also have a tractor show coming up this year. It's here at the same place, Young's Dairy in Yellow Springs.
Yeah, this is Kent Hook and myself and Dan Leidick. This is our truck.
It's a 53 3/4 ton. I think it's an R120. And I originally got it off of a gentleman that came out of Columbus, but it's originally a West Virginia truck. I did some motor work and brake work and stuff on it, but basically I really liked it because the bed was actually flat. And they actually hauled coal in the thing. Well, the two things I think is really unique about it, I love the hood, because you unlatch both sides, you can just lift it off and do your work and stuff. But like I said, the real thing that brought me to it was the quality of the cab. But the bed was absolutely flat. So most of them, when you get them, they're just woppy jawed and everything else. But this particular truck, I'm the second owner of. It's a ton. 3800 1948 Chevy. It's all original except for a 12 volt, and that was done before I got it. It's basically the way you see the man that owned it was the original buyer. Was bought as a cab, and it has power takeoff. It came out of central Kansas, and it has some really fun stuff with it. One thing as you look in the back, you're looking at a 9-foot bed. It has power takeoff. When the guy bought it, the original wood's underneath this. He had the strips taken off, put a metal piece down, and you might notice a hole up there. We'll talk about that in a minute. The original bumper rotted off, and his sons built this for him. Little unique thing. The fun part of that is this had metal sides up to here, had the wood tailgate piece, and he put grain in it. Did I say it only has now 8,100 miles on it? Did I say that? That's why I became a Chevy man. It has, all I've done to it is tuned it real good. Of course, the fluid and stuff. Had the original brake line on them. They just fell off. This here is a lever that opens a hole right here. You see it? And then the power takeoff was on an auger here that brought the grain up and went to the cattle. Now the good part of this is, come take a look at this. If you look very carefully up there, you'll see a little jar and a can. And his wife, right after he bought it, put that up there and made that can, and it actually has a slit in the top. He always wore bib overhauls, and she always made sure he had enough money for a piece of pie and a cup of coffee at the local truck stop. How about that? It's got a 514 rear end. I think it's 132 or 134 wheelbase. What's that? Oh yeah, it's all stainless steel.
I'm Mark Besser from Bolivar, Missouri, and we brought the Austins and Bantams and Crossleys to the show. This is a 1940 Bantam. I bought it actually at an auction in New York. We went to about 3 or 4 years ago, and since we've had it restored. It has a 4-cylinder engine in it. This is the last year for the Bantam pickup, and there's probably less than 10 of them still around. This is a 1934 Austin. I bought this at a guy restored it in Texas. He spent 3 years on the truck and did a great job. It's probably one of them that I feel like is most reliable. I can drive it anywhere. It's really a good truck. This last year for the Austins. which they went out of business, and then Bantam took them over and tried to run for 3 or 4 years, and they went broke too. They both have the 4-cylinder engine. The Austin version was 15 horse. Bantam took it over and changed it, modified it to a 22 horsepower.
But what's the top speed on one of these?
I try not to get over 30, 35. Yeah. Because just an old vehicle, you don't want to wrap them out too bad. But they really were more of a town car. They weren't made to go down the road too much. The Woody, this one came from New Jersey. A guy had it for 25 years and gave up on restoring it, and we took it over and finished it. It's a 42 Crosley with a 2-cylinder air-cooled motor. I really don't know a top. They're 10 horsepower, so they have very little power at all. This one I actually found real close to home by accident. It was an original truck come out of Nevada. A guy drove it in the military, and it sat in a barn for several years. Basically all we did was paint this truck. It was that good in mechanical shape. These are first overhead cam. If you want to work on it, everything comes out the bottom. You cannot take the head off. But they were a great little motor for a lot. They raced them. They would turn like 9,000 RPM and not blow up. This was the only year they produced the round-sided bed on a pickup. All the others were a different bed.
My name's Joe Summers. I'm from Nashport, Ohio. It has a 216.5 cubic inches. It's the original Chevy engine. Amazingly, when I tore that engine down, it still had shims under the rod bearings, which, you know, was good because I didn't have to have the rods rebabbited. We did have to bore the engine oversized because it did have some pits in the cylinders, but we had plenty of room to bore, so we bored it out and put new pistons and everything in it.
Okay, my name is Lair Dirks. I live here in Yellow Springs, Ohio, and I bought the truck probably maybe about 7 or 8 years ago at an auction up in the mountains in West Virginia. It's 1931. It's actually titled as a 32, but all the parts are AA. So, but they tell me that in West Virginia they titled it the year it was sold, not the year of manufacture sometimes. So things got a little mixed up, and I haven't bothered to change it. Just keep it the way it is. It's just a fun little truck to drive around town.
Hi, my name's Scott Dorf. I'm from Columbus, Ohio, and this is my 1954 Ford F-350 pickup. This engine's it's a Cummins 4-cylinder B-series engine. It's out of a bread delivery type truck. It's from about an 87 model. Truck's also 4-wheel drive. Its front axle's out of a 74 Dodge pickup. Back axle's out of a 91 Chevy ton truck. And I also have an automatic transmission with overdrive in it.
My name's Dan Ellerding. I'm from Jamestown, Ohio. I found this 1922 white truck about 7 years ago. It was a Cincinnati delivery truck, Eagle Coffee and Spice Mills. I've done a little bit of work to it, but I've got more to do. But it has a lot of nice old original wood and so forth on it. Well, it's White's own engine. This is a 1922 White Model 15. Had to find another hood, old hood. We were reproduction fenders. I found some used acetylene lights and some kerosene Adlec side lights. I had had it re-lettered, had the seats recovered. I added some old boxes and paraphernalia that they might use in the old days. And then there originally was a roll-down canvas in the back. There was roll-down canvases on each side of the driver's platform. Got a little glass sight for the showing that you're pumping oil pressure. Little toolbox that's character of that era. There's the floorboards are are rubbed out from the driver and passenger. There's rear brakes only on it, and I imagine down in Cincinnati with the steep hills, they had some scary moves. Just a nice old original 1922 white.
I'm Bob McLain. I'm from Germantown, Ohio. This is a 1950 GMC 3/4 ton mini pumper fire truck. It came from Boston, New York, which is a small town below Buffalo. I purchased this from a volunteer firefighter who had retired from the Boston Fire Department about 2.5 years ago. We participate in a lot of shows. We go to fire truck shows. We're a member of the Miami Valley Antique Fire Apparatus Association. We sponsor a show in Germantown, Ohio, the first Saturday after 4th of July every year. We enjoy taking our truck to various places and sharing it with people. Kind of a step back in history, take a look at the old fire apparatus. The restoration is 98% original. I traced the lettering and the gold leaf, and then that was duplicated. It was a ground up restoration. The restoration was sponsored by my wife Rachel. She wrote the checks.
And it went way over budget.
And she says it went way over budget. I'm not in charge of the budget, so she would know that.
Okay, I'm Ken Robinek out of Louisville, Kentucky. This is a 1936 International. It's a 1.5 ton, they call it a C30 International truck. I purchased the truck in pieces. There was an ad in one of the newspapers, and my son saw the ad, and we went over and looked at it. And the truck was in a storage garage. There was a frame sitting there and barrels of parts. And that's how this truck started. And it took me a while to figure out what type of body to put onto it. And I went to a swap meet, and this body was at the swap meet. It came out of Kansas. It's a Columbia tank, approximately 400 gallons. It's a 3-compartment tank built in about the 20s. The 1929s, early 20s, 29s, the tanks were just this assembly here. This is kind of a compartment for storage. And in the 30s, they start putting in these side containers for putting oil cans on and for storage. The tank was a motor oil delivery tank, so what you would do is deliver the motor oil to the service stations and fill up 5 and 10 gallon cans. Then they would go and dump the oil into a lubester, which is, this is before the time of buy a can of quart of oil. You had a glass flask, a glass like mason jar, you filled it up with motor oil, and this is the way they sold the motor oil in that period of time. Your metal handles here for operating the valve, and then when you put 5 gallons of gas, you go with your high-tech computer, and that turns it to 5 gallons. I restore gas station memorabilia, and I've been restoring some Gulf oil gas pumps, and that's how I kind of got the idea of going to a Gulf oil truck. And plus, with the oil trucks, you have such great color schemes from Sunoco, Gulf, Mobil, and that makes it a lot of fun. The cab was in pretty bad shape. I had to redo all the wood of the cab. These trucks have a wooden frame, and then the sheet metal is on the wooden frame. The engine is a 6-cylinder flathead. Very popular engine for International. They had an engine called the HD 233 cubic inch. Yeah, they're a lot of fun to restore.